welcome and welcome back. In today's video, I'm going to be showing how I draw a simple, proportionate face. The method that I use for drawing is slightly inspired by the Andrew Loomis method, and that just means I've modified it and I don't draw all the guidelines. And I prefer to be a little bit more simple in my sketch, and that just leaves room for flexibility. But now I'm going to show how I do that. First, I draw a circle. And then I find my center line and I cut the circle in half vertically with that center line. The center line represents which direction I want the face to go in. So that means if the head is tilted right or left, and it also helps me see which angle the face is sitting at. So whether that's a front view or a 3/4 view, for example. Then from there, I like to figure out where the jaw will sit on the face. So for the jawline, I begin to draw and connect the jawline to the circle that I just made. I like to think of two lines on the outside of the circle that come down almost straight on each side first. And I may angle them inwards a bit, and then there are two more lines that connect to those previous lines that angle inwards. From there, what's left is the chin. So I usually will just draw a horizontal line, or sometimes I will curve it and make an arc. When figuring out the height or the length of the jaw, I recommend looking at a subject to help you see how long or how short you want the jawline to be. But another tip is after you've drawn both the circle and the jaw, make sure your circle is not too big in comparison to your jawline, or that your circle is not too far away from the jawline. Next, I like to divide the face into thirds with 3 horizontal lines. Usually I see people divide the face into thirds with even spacing, but I do things a little bit differently. So the first line is at the bottom of the circle, almost like the bottom fifth of the circle. And this is a approximate guideline. After that, the second line is slightly below the circle, so around the middle of the face or so, or about half a centimeter down from the bottom circle. And the third line is about an inch or so away from the second line, or an inch away from the chin. Again, this is just approximate, and a lot of this I like to eyeball to kind of figure out where I want to place the eyes, nose, and lips, because that's what these lines are. I personally divide up the face differently for more of a stylized look, and it's just different from how you do the original Loomis method. Something to keep in mind is that everyone's face is different, so the facial features may sit at different heights on the head. For any of these lines, you can make adjustments until you get something that you like, but it really takes practice figuring out what really works for you. After I figure out that, I like to cut off the sides of the circle. This just means take off a slice of the circle from each side, and the reason why I do this is because our heads are flat on the sides and not perfect spheres, and this is more noticeable at different angles. How much of the circle that you take off depends on how big your circle is and what your subject looks like, or your reference looks like, if you have one. I usually start off with little slices, and I adjust after I've drawn the facial features, or even later down the line in the drawing. When you make these slices, try to make them even. I realize I kind of didn't make them as even, but it really didn't affect the drawing too much. But once I have those measurements, I like to erase the sides, and then it reveals kind of the flatter edges of the head. And here I'm just marking what each of the guidelines that I created is for. So the eyes, nose, and mouth, as I mentioned. And the top of the ears sit somewhere where the eyes fall on the face. So the top of the ears are around where the eyes are on the face. So now I'm just kind of blocking out the eyes for the face, and then I'm just refining the shape and just getting in a simple general shape. I didn't go too detailed in the beginning with this. I just wanted to get a general idea of the shape that I wanted and where I wanted the eyes to be. Now, something else to keep in mind is that the eyes are always one eye apart from each other. So if they're a little bit too close, you can make that adjustment. This just helps the face be a little bit more proportionate. So for the nose, I like to start and keep things pretty simple, and I just do 2 little indications for the nostrils and the nostril holes, and then I just make little arcs around the sides and underneath for the septum. And then for the lips, I explain lips in a different video in depth, but I usually make a curvy M shape for the middle of the lips, then I make a small curve for the cupid's bow and a bigger curve for the lower lip. Next is the eyebrows. So the eyebrows are about 1 inch again above the eyes, give or take. Everyone's face is different, but I just kind of use that as a rule of thumb. But I draw this kind of boxy shape, and then I will draw a point on the end of it and just add some hairs in afterward. I make any adjustments that I need to, whether something might be a little bit too high or too low, and then I pretty much have most of the facial features. But next is the ears. So like I said, the ears kind of start where the eyes start and they end where the nose is. And this is the shape that I use for the ear. It keeps things pretty simple for me when I'm just blocking out shapes. And now I'm just adding in a little bit of a neck, which I just think of as a cylinder. Then I add these kind of lines to the ears connecting to the head. That just shows that the ears are kind of in a frontward facing perspective. And then for the irises, I'm just drawing in these circles and adjusted them. And then for the ear, there's always like this Y shape. I didn't do that great of a job trying to explain this, but I thought I'd leave it in there so people can kind of understand how the ears look. I'm not really a huge fan of drawing ears, if I'm gonna be super honest. But obviously you don't have to draw ears this way. You can kind of keep them more simple and just keep them without the Y shape. I'm not too sure what it's called, but for the hairline I usually just start with a straight line, and then I move the line up and down to kind of see where I think I want the hairline to be. Each person's hairline is different, so that's something, to think about. The hairline kind of ended up being double of the first eyeline that I made, like the section size. So it's like double the width of that, if that makes sense. And this hairline was like a little bit more of a closer down hairline. And I also like to draw in these pieces on the sides. This kind of gives it more of like a, what is it called? Like a masculine haircut. But it's just a guideline. You don't have to draw them exactly like that. I think using a subject would be good to kind of figure out what type of hairline you might want to go for. But after I have everything down, I go ahead and I erase all the guidelines. Sometimes I'll just lighten them up, just lower the opacity layer that they're on and do that way. So for the nose, I'm just kind of refining it a bit and giving it more of the shape that I was looking for. And that's what this part of the video is right now, is just kind of fixing things and making them look more how I want to and less like a simple guide. I decided to move up the eyebrows a bit just for more of a arched eyebrow look. I made the nose a little bit bigger. So I just go around tweaking things, and eventually this is what I got, and I'm pretty happy with it. And if we compare it to the original guide, you see everything still lines up, everything still makes sense. So yeah. Something I wanted to mention, so for the eyes, I originally have put them a little bit too high on the line, but they're supposed to be in the middle of the line for the face that I was going for. But here I am, I'm coloring it, adding in some shading. For this drawing, I kind of went through a few changes, and I believe that's because I drew everything from imagination, so I wasn't sure what exactly I wanted to keep or change. So you might see her mouth go from open to close, back to open, and then, a few changes here and there with some of the rendering. But I eventually got it to look how I wanted to. I also ended up making the eyes bigger and a little bit more symmetrical because they were not. But yeah, here's the lips closed and the colors that I went for, which is like blue and black. But that's pretty much how everything turned out. Please let me know if this video was helpful by liking it or leaving a comment. Sometimes it's a bit difficult to explain things, but thank you for watching and I'll see you in the next one.